Okay, welcome to the State of Mirrorless, our long-running series of interviews with photographers and industry experts who use mirrorless camera systems. Today, I have a feeling this will not be a short episode because I'm not interviewing just one person. I'm actually interviewing many persons. Hutton is a photographer, a digital artist, a voiceover artist, a show host, a teacher, figure skater, a clown, and who knows what else.
Oh my God, you did some background work.
So welcome, Karen.
Thank you.
Nice to have all of you here.
Are you saying I'm schizophrenic?
No,
it's so lovely to meet you. I've seen, you and I have been connected on Google Plus for so long, but we've never actually met. So this is like really exciting. It's lovely to meet you. Finally.
It is for me. So I'm not suggesting you have a split personality disorder, only that you are a multifaceted talents. So, but this show is about photography, so we are mostly interested. Our audience is mostly interested about photography, but of course, it will be fine if we start talking about figure skating. I'm sure it will be fine. So, how did you get started in photography? And was it something that always interested you, or is more of a recent?
Oh no, it was always an interest. My family, my mother took pictures of everything, and it turns out we didn't learn this till after my mother passed away, but apparently we had quite a few shutterbugs in our family before that. I'm quarter Norwegian, and we found so many photographs of the family coming over from Norway on a boat, on a big ship. I mean, these people went to town. And so my mother's life was documented of her growing up, just phenomenal photographs of her. Then we had it. So it was just always a way of seeing the world through a camera. So when I got to junior college, I decided I wanted to be a professional. And so I dove in both feet, and I was like, oh my God, I just want to do this forever. And this is, this is what I want to do. And, but darkroom chemicals, I love the darkroom. I love to process. So I love the darkroom, and I would spend hours in there. And that was really kind of what made it all really fly for me, was the darkroom and the work the prints, that I could make and walk out with. And then the darkroom chemicals made me so sick. It was just awful. And I just could not, after a while, tolerate being in there for more than about 10 minutes. Oh, it just broke my heart. So, gosh, that was many years ago. So, I had a long list. You've pointed out that I have many facets, and that's because when I was young, I knew I wanted to be a photographer. And then when that got dashed to the ground and went down in flames, I picked myself up and started pursuing the other things on my list, which is why, horses and horse training and figure skating and dance and singing and voice and acting. And I was like, well, crap, if I can't do what I want to do, I'll just do everything else too. And of course, photography went with me, which I think is why I like to shoot such a wide variety of things artistically, because everything I did had an artistic component, and I loved photographing the story and the feeling of all of it. So it's a lifetime thing for me, is my long and windy answer.
Sorry, I have to apologize. I forgot about the horses.
That's okay. I brought them up. But this is not a horse training show. If it were, we could go on at length, but it's not. So we'll stick to photography.
We'll stick to cameras.
Yeah.
And from looking at your photography, and you mentioned the darkroom, but looking at your photography nowadays, it is digital, of course. It's apparent that there is a lot of post-processing work, and I say that in how can you say? Sometimes post-processing is seen by some people as a bad thing, but I say that in the best possible way. I mean, it's really your post-processing really gets from your images, gets out the best of a scene and so on. You spend a lot of time doing post-processing?
It depends on the image. Sometimes, okay, so we're going to be talking about Fuji shortly. Lately, just for certain kinds of shots, I don't have to do very much at all. And certain kinds of shots I would not really do a lot to. But then there are the pieces, when I call them pieces, then they become a story and a world and a, you know, feeling and an emotion and all these things, you know, and a point of view and a statement and a message all unto themselves. And those I spend more time post processing. So I kind of have divisions in my mind of the types that I do.
Is that something that you somehow envision when you're taking a shot? You know, like, this is something that I'm going to.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I do. If I'm photographing, I mean, I'm not an event photographer, but I felt like if I'm out walking along the ocean and I'm with friends and I'm photographing scenes and birds and them and, you know, other things going on, I know I'm probably not going to make a piece of art out of that. That's just fun. And I want it to, and I want, but everything I do, I want to have be a story or an emotion or a, you know, I want people to look at it and go, I get that. Even if it's just a photograph of a friend. But I know in certain instances, yeah, that's probably not going to be the masterpiece. Now, when I go traveling and I do ancient architecture and I do my landscapes and I'm just out there, you know, like if I'm out in nature and I'm just like, oh, you know, this is like the best thing in the world and I'm so happy, you know, chances are I'm going to walk away with something I want to, you know, love on in post-processing and share with the world in that more artistic way.
Fine. You mentioned Fuji, so we have the obligatory section of our show where we talk about gear, and this is about mirrorless systems, about mirrorless cameras. So you are shooting DSLRs until recently, specifically I think Canon. Then you decided to try a different brand that didn't go so well. So now you are trying to see how a Fuji system works. Is that right? Correct assessment?
That's how it started. Yeah, that's how it began. I mean, I love my Canon and I still have it. I'm not giving it up yet because it takes me. There are, you know, like I say, I have the beauty, the message related, the beautiful, you know, life is light and all that kind of stuff. Those kind of photos that I like to take. And if I just want to write at this particular moment in time, just because of where I am in my learning curve, if I just want to get that and I don't want to fiddle around, I might pull up my Canon still. But I'm getting more comfortable with Fuji. I'm using the X-T1 and right now 3 lenses that I chose because of what I shoot and how I shoot. And so they're the wide angle, the 10-24, the 16-55, and which is a 2.8. And then what's the longer one? The 55 to
200.
200, right. Those are the 3 that I've been using mostly. And yeah, it started because my Canon gear is so heavy. And I don't know what convergence of things have happened, but my pack has gotten really heavy, which I always really try to stay in shape so I can carry that thing. But I'm in a little less great condition in the past, I don't know, a little under a year because I've been working on my website and doing other things to kind of shift elements of my life around, meaning spending more time behind a computer. And somehow I'm just not in as good a shape as I was. And my pack has been developing a mind of its own and sort of throwing me down on the ground. And I haven't found that too pleasant. And plus I've got some traveling coming up. I'm about to leave for France for 3 weeks. And the thought of hauling that pack is just less and less appealing as time goes on. But I'm not willing to give up, you know, the quality of image. So I thought that meant full frame. And of course I had tried Sony before when it first came out and I loved it because it was, you know, so different and boy, first of its kind. And it was, you know, I wrote a blog post on Stuck in Customs about it and I, you know, stand behind every word at the time. But when I revisited it now, it just, I don't know, you know, I had evolved or changed and the lenses and stuff just it's not that it was good or bad, it was just it didn't line up with what I want to do. And by the way, if we're going to talk gear, I always tell people, don't just listen to what I'm saying, don't just do what I'm doing. You have to figure out what you want to do, and go find that. because there's so many options out there right now, and there's always going to be trade-offs to be made. And it can be really confusing if you try to go at it from the point of view of what's the best camera, or Karen uses this camera, or Trey uses that camera. You're going to drive yourself insane. So you have to really decide what you want to shoot primarily, what your priorities are, why, and the why, what, when, where, how thing for yourself, and then go look for your gear. So that's why I tried Sony and sent it back, because not because it wasn't great gear, because it's phenomenal, but it just couldn't do what I want to do. So at that point, I was pretty disappointed, because I had this trip coming up, and I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I have to lug my Canon, because I got to take 2 bodies, all the time. And and then Fuji kind of came onto my screen. A friend of mine said, you should try Fuji. I'm using Fuji. I kind of like it. Ken Kamenetsky was my friend who suggested I do that. And I was like, okay, because at that point I was pretty much a blank. And so I received it, and I was really surprised. I know it's an APS-C sensor. We can talk about sensors here in a second, but I really, really loved the way it felt, because my way back when, what am I trying to say? My relationship with the camera was that it felt a certain way in my hands, and it had knobs, and a lot of it was manual, and it was old-fashioned, although it was new-fashioned at the time, but now it's old-fashioned. And Fuji really felt comfortable to me, the way all the knobs are on the outside and a lot of the adjustments are outside. And of course, it does things with color that was phenomenal. And I was just kind of blown away by the whole experience of picking it up and kind of going, wow, I kind of feel like this is home. And that was my first impression. I've since had more impressions, but I want to stop and take a breath for a moment. Okay. I'm going to have a little sip of water, if you don't mind.
I don't have to ask you questions. I can just give you an input, and you can just answer all the questions I'm planning to ask you. You just have this ability to see in advance where I want to take you. No, I just wanted to add what you said about the fact that the choice of specific equipment is very personal. What works for somebody might not necessarily work for somebody else. And
right. And there's such good gear out there. Oh my God, Sony is amazing. Panasonic is amazing. Some of these other, Olympus, wow. But that's why it can drive you crazy, because you're like, oh, this is better. No, this is better. No, put it all down. Step away.
A tendency in people to second guess themselves and think, oh, now I chose Fuji, but it's the best. Maybe Olympus is coming out with this new model. Did I do the right choice? And so on. And
there's always going to be a new model. There's always going to be, for me, my priorities are, I wanted light, and, really, I'm not starting with landscape. I wanted to start with travel and the ability to travel lightly and shoot amazing photos, to not have to fight with the gear and not have to constantly be thinking, because when I shoot, the zone that I go into is, I can talk gear all day. I just don't like to very much, because that's not the point. To me, when I go shooting, I see, I'm like, oh my goodness, look at that. And then I kind of stand there and I let it come into me, and like, wow, what's the story, and what does that feel like, and what do I want to say, and wow, that's just, and then I go into this like very right brain zone, and I set up my camera, and I paint the picture. I shoot the feeling or the vibe or the story or whatever it is that is making me go, oh. And if I have to stop that flow and go, oh crap, where in the menu is that setting? The thing is lost, and then I hate my gear. And so I want that level of comfort, and I want gear that rises to the occasion for the way I work, because it's all good, So you just have to decide how you work.
Of course. And another thing that I see being in many online photography forums is lots of people who ask questions like, I've got the 18 millimeters lens, and I've got the 35 This one was one question that I saw today. Should I get the 27 or not? Or should I get the 1024 zoom? Or what do I do? I always want to answer, I don't know. How can I tell you? I mean, I don't know how you shoot. I don't know what's your, if you like primes, you like zooms, you like shooting at night, you like shooting sports or anything. I cannot tell you what is right for you. You have to find out by yourself. I can give you impressions on what I do and what I like, but that's not going to necessarily translate to a good advice for you.
Right. But if those of us who are in a position to say something, say, you have to decide what are you looking for? What do you need? Think about, because that's what a lot of people do. That's my resistance to talking gear usually, is that everybody puts gear as the God, you know. Oh my God, if I get the right gear, oh my God, in other words, they think there's a right answer. And there's not a right answer or a best answer. There's probably three bests. You could probably go three different directions at any point in your shooting life and be fine. You just have to decide what you want, what will make you happy, what feels good, what is very personal. And I'm not saying I don't second guess myself. I do, but I've also learned that I can do really good photos with an iPhone too. So, you know, anything that gives me more flexibility than that is a bonus.
So you're happy so far with your Fuji? And
I'm crazy happy. Yeah, I'm crazy happy about it because, well, I was very clear about what I wanted, and I picked it up and smiled, and I was like, wow, that's a sign. And then, you know, then it does think a lot. It is set up differently than Canon, and, you know, it's an APS-C sensor, so they are different, you know, than full frame. You cannot apply the same rules of full frame to APS-C. And Fuji has its own way of dealing with color and contrasts, and you have options that, you know, in Fuji that you don't have in Canon. And I'm not saying it's better or worse, it's just different. So what I had to be willing to do, which I was okay, you know, forget what you once knew and start from the beginning. And that's painful, but I was willing to do that. And so I'm still learning, but, you know, there are just things to learn. Like, for instance, even when choosing an f-stop for a shoot, a photo, you have to remember that that's, what is it, 1.5. You have to multiply that by 1.5 to know what your real f-stop is. So, and everything changes everything. So you really have to learn your gear and what begets what. And, you know, I think I'm going to be learning this for quite a while, but I'm starting to really like the images. So what I did was I started with the more handheld people, you know, moments, some landscape, but only landscape such that I could handhold it, just to see if I liked it well enough and see if I could get along with it. And I do, and I loved it. It was fabulous. So now I just got my Really Right Stuff L plate, because I use Really Right Stuff tripods and stuff. I got an L plate, so I'm starting now to dive into landscape with it, and so far so good.
You might have to learn it again in a few weeks from now, because I don't know if you're aware of this, but Fuji is going to release a new firmware update for the X-T1. Which will completely revolutionize the autofocus system. Will give you many more modes and options to play with. So it's
I'm looking forward to that
curve with the same camera.
Say that again.
As I said, it's another learning curve with the same camera.
Yeah, learning curves are us.
Yeah,
well, I mean, I think that's an area, you know, you talked about the autofocus, you know, the whole turn it on and go to focus. That from the time you turn it on to the time you like focus on something that you want to get, like, oh, there it is. And by the time it's already in place, the moment's gone. And then the camera's like, I'm ready now. And yet it's faster than most. So I'm looking forward to this upgrade, firmware update, because from what I understand, it'll take care of that and enable it to shoot. And everybody says, oh, you can't shoot animals. Well, I've been shooting birds. I've been shooting pelicans flying and trying the continuous mode, you know, the bursts and stuff like that. And I'm actually getting some decent pictures.
Good.
It's a little easier with the Canon. I'm not saying it's, oh yeah, it's definitely a wildlife camera. It's, you know.
I was talking to somebody today who had a new XT1, and he was looking at the menus and said there are 3 options on this menu here that are not on the manual. I was trying to find what they mean in the manual, but they're not in the manual.
Oh, how
said,
interesting.
No, those are from the latest firmware update, and your manual is older than that, so they are not there.
Yeah, they got a little catching up to do.
So like, what is this mechanical versus electronic shutter thing? I have no idea.
Yeah, I know. It's really, really new. I'm also pleased. So another interesting thing happened related to Fuji. So I started working, you know, I blog about all this stuff. I decided to be really open about the whole process of, well, everybody says I'm switching. I'm not switching yet. I'm adding. It's more of an additive process right now, but I'm adding in a big way with the potential of switching. I'm open to it, but we'll see. However, I've been documenting the whole process because I just couldn't find anywhere out there that talked about, okay, so here's my experience and here's what I was looking for and here's what I've learned, and just sort of like been transparent about the process of it. Everybody says, oh, this is best and that's best and so on and so forth. And I had the luxury of, you know, just doing it my own way. And then after I started to go, all right, I like it. This is really cool. I think I might have found my home, you know, for this new system. Then Fuji approached me and asked if I'd be interested in partnering with them. So I was hesitant because I'm like, well, if you partner, then doesn't that mean you have to start changing how you talk about it and nobody believes you anymore because now you're partnering with the manufacturer? So they specifically said, we don't want you to change anything about the way you talk about it, the way you approach it. Just do what you do. It's just, we want to be a part of that. So I'm now partnered with Fuji as well, which is really exciting because there's always more you can do with, there's things they can do, there's things they can't do by themselves, and there's things I can't do by myself, but partnering, we can cover more ground. So even though I talk about it and I love it, I loved it and did this before that happened. So I just kind of wanted to make that clear.
Yeah, you correctly said you're not switching, but what I saw many people thinking they were getting another system to play it side by side with their current system, and this is not just related to Canon versus Fuji or others, but they would just start using the new system, and after maybe 1 year, they realize they have not used the old camera in all that time.
Right. And I mean, I'm kind of doing that a little bit right now just because I'm going to be carrying just Fuji because I really don't want to lug. I affectionately call my Canon the brick. And I have 2 of them plus lenses. So I don't want to carry the brick. I just don't want to travel with it. Travel's getting hard enough nowadays. It's just not as much fun as it used to be. And they're really, you know, cracking down on weight and all that kind of thing. So I really want to travel light. So I'm really immersing myself in Fuji right now, so that I'm comfortable enough to not have my gear get in my way, you know, when I see what I want to shoot over there.
And on the other hand, I know other people, and one who comes to my mind is Kirk Tuck. I don't know if you know about him.
Is who? Say again?
Kirk Tuck, Tuck. He's an Austin-based photographer. He has a very interesting blog, and he is probably the most brand agnostic photographer I know. He's able to, when he has a job, an assignment to do, is always choosing the right camera for that job, or what he says is the right camera, without regard for brand or anything. He's able to switch between Olympus and Canon, Nikon, Hasselblad, whatever. So most people are not like that. Most people will become the use of a specific model will become ingrained in their minds.
Right. And I mean, one of my concerns too is, has always been, and I told Fuji this, is I'm like, yeah, but it's an APS-C sensor and I shoot landscape and I make big prints. And so then I had to start learning, you know, when I talk about learning from the ground up, there's a thing to be considered about sensor size and pixel size and numbers of pixels and things like that. And that is the size of the pixel themselves. So like, I have a good friend, Peter Adams, who shoots, he actually, he just came back from Paris, and he shot his Phase 1 and his Sony RX1, which is also full frame, and his iPhone with these cool lenses. Like, those were his 3 cameras for Paris. And he shot a lot of incredible photos with that RX1, and it's a fixed lens, small camera.
Mm-hmm.
And so we got into conversation about, because here he's shooting medium format and he's shooting compact and iPhone. And then now I've got Fuji, and the photos look amazing. And I've seen big prints, and I'm like, how do they do that? And how is it they can look good big? And it's just like, it kind of like warps my brain. And so he's all scientific and everything. And he was telling me that the pixel size, which is measured in microns, in Phase 1, there's 6 microns, and they're big. So the bigger the pixel, the better, image result you're going to get. So that's why these medium formats, they have a lot of, I think his camera is only like 40 megapixel, but the pixels themselves are 6 microns. So, he rattled off some other brands. I don't remember, exactly what all they were, but the higher the bigger the pixel itself, the better the image. So even though the Fuji's an APS-C sensor, 16 megapixel, but the micron size is like it's like an upper 4s. It's approaching 5, and that's good. And that's why the images are good. So when you're looking at megapixel, there's algorithms and there's math and all these numbers and everything, but that's part of it. That's part of the equation, is what size of the microns. Because if you have like 3 point something micron sized pixel, but you've got 50 of them, it isn't a better image necessarily, unless they do something else. They're always, coming up with new technology. That's why Fuji did what they did, because they got the balance of, and I actually asked them about this, I was so curious about it, which is why I'm even spewing this right now. But they got the balance of the numbers of megapixels, the size of the pixels themselves, and, whatever other mathy things they do to make an image that looks amazing and can also be made big. How big, I don't know yet. I'll find out.
All right. No, I've got my prints from Fuji. They're all...
yeah, they're amazing. And I've seen them. I've seen them big. I've seen them like 6 feet. I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah. No, it's fine. I've printed up to A2 size. I don't know what that translates in inches. So I'm pretty happy with the results.
Yeah.
Anyway, speaking about, you mentioned Paris, you mentioned France. So tell us a bit. I'm curious. I'm a passionate traveler myself when I can. So if I hear people are going to somewhere, I want to know. So I would like to know about your upcoming trip to France. Is that a trip dedicated to photography? Where in particular are you going? Are you going to Paris or along the seaside?
I'm going to cover some territory. I'm going over, I promised myself after this last year and a half where I really focused on my business and website and other things that I had to develop behind the scenes, that I would reward myself with something amazing. I wasn't sure what. And then my friend Valerie Jardin, Valerie, yeah?
I know, yeah.
Yeah. She's an incredible street photographer and does workshops all over the world. And she heard me whining about wanting to go back to Paris, because I'd been in Paris in winter around Christmas time some years ago and did photography then. And I said, I want to go back in the spring. And she goes, well, yeah, we have a workshop coming up, And I said, oh my God, I'm going to come and hang out with you guys. So that's what started it. And then I had friends who said, what? You're going to Paris? We're coming too. So that was the second week. And then I turned to my husband and I said, well, everybody else is coming. You want to come over? So then he said, sure. So that's our third week. So the first 2 weeks will be in Paris with some day trips. And then the third week, we're going to do a road trip. And we're going to go out to the Normandy, Brittany area and Mont Saint-Michel and Saint-Malo and other fun stuff.
This is where Valerie comes from, right? She's from Normandy, I think.
Yeah.
No, Valerie is an awesome person. I met her in Rome. She came here to do a workshop. And she was also together with... I was in her cohort at the Arcanum, and maybe in a few minutes we will talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
So she was there with her group of workshop attendees, and two
Yep.
of them were from my same cohort at the Arcanum. So I took the train, went down to Rome. We stayed together for a few hours. It was a very, very nice day. So
Oh, that's awesome.
always nice to.
Valerie is just so wonderful. She's a great photographer.
It's always nice to meet somebody in person when you've
Yeah.
seen them so many times online and chatted.
And a Fuji shooter. She loves Fuji also.
Fuji shooter, yes.
Which is whenever I think Fuji, I always think Valerie, even though she just loves it and talks about it all the time. But that's she was one of the people whose word about it I listened to as well, and I thought, okay, I'll give us a shot. But yeah, so in answer to your question, yes, I'm going to be photographing the entire time. It's just that the how it all came about was really for fun, and I already made up my mind to go, and then all the rest of this camera stuff happened, and so I'm very excited to now go and
you're just bringing in the Fuji.
And I'm just bringing the Fuji.
That would be the real test.
Yeah, I'm a little nervous about it. I'm like, it's a security blanket thing, to have what always works for you and leave it behind is like, ooh. But you know what? Nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I've now shot enough with it that I'm pretty confident it's going to be amazing.
Did you get enough batteries?
Yes, I have a lot of batteries. They're like chiclets. You need them like chiclets. They're just like, those little chiclet things, the gum that you chew. Yeah, you need a lot of those. You
need a lot. They go away so fast.
Well, I mean, that's part of why it's so light. I mean, part of why Canon's so heavy is they have, these Mondo batteries, which last a long time, but you need a Sherpa to haul that stuff around with you. Of course, Annie Leibovitz, have you ever seen video of Annie Leibovitz working? She's like, got her shot set up and she's looking, she's in the moment, but her camera doesn't work. So she just hands it off. Somebody puts a new one in her hand and then she just keeps going. And I'm like, yeah, like that. How is that asking too much? But so far that hasn't happened for me. So I'm going to go with a mirrorless camera.
You would need an assistant with a large bag and a trolley bag.
I need a lot of assistance.
I don't know that when Annie Leibovitz does a shoot, she has probably a lot of assistant and people.
Oh, a lot. I watched a behind the scenes video of her shooting the it was some years ago, the Marie Antoinette movie with Kirsten Dunst. And it was absolutely fascinating to watch her work and to see the whole thing. So you can Google that and check it out. It's pretty cool.
Okay, let's talk a bit about some of your other activities that are related to photography, but not strictly photography. I said in the introduction that you are a TV show host. I was referring to your series, The Chat.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about it? How did the idea come up? How is it going?
It's a little bit on hiatus right now, I again don't have a team, and I have episodes that I need to edit that I haven't had time to. So it's a little bit on a hiatus, but what it came from was I love behind the scenes, not just behind the scenes. I like to know about.
Sorry to interrupt you, but some people might not know what we are talking about. So.
Oh, The Chat is you're talking about The Chat. Explain that.
Yes, please.
So The Chat is a show that I do. It's on my website, KarenHutton.com. If you look in the blog, I believe we have a quick link to all the episodes there, and I also have a YouTube channel. But The Chat is basically an online show about inspiration. I started off calling it that we talk to some of the most amazing people, inspirational people around the world, and living their life as if it were their art, which if there was one message behind my work and something that I stand behind, it's that life is light, and living your life as if it were your art is like one of the most amazing gifts you can give yourself. And that is how to live life to the fullest, in my opinion. So these were all people that I felt were doing that to one degree or another. And I wanted to talk to them about most of them were photographers. I did talk to some people in business and just doing things in a kind of an alternative way, but according to their own vision of that, whatever it is they're doing. But a lot of them were photographers. And I talked to Art Wolf. I have one with Rick Salmon actually ready to come out. And yeah, so we just talk about some about photography, but a lot about the inspiration behind it and their vision behind it, and you know, why they do what they do, and so that you get to know the person a bit behind the camera.
Yeah, Art Wolf is actually one of my favorite photographers.
Oh, he's amazing.
Overall, he's amazing. Not just as a photographer, but I think I don't know him personally, but he looks like such a great person, and
Yeah.
I love his commitment to conservation, to environmental.
Oh, I know. He is an amazing person. He's fantastic. I adore being around him. He's funny, and he's a hell of a gardener. I don't know if people know that, but he's an amazing gardener. He blows me away. That's his downtime, you know, relaxation activity. So so he's multifaceted too, you see.
Yeah. So that the chat is visible on your blog, and I think it's on iTunes too. So
no, I don't have it on iTunes. It's just on YouTube and my website. And the future of it is, like I say, I kind of had to take a little hiatus just because the episodes are, you know, they take time, but they're not too bad. But the editing, you know, takes a really long time, and it's all behind the computer. And yeah.
And I can see there's a lot of production value. You record them in the studio with the guest in the studio. It's not like this thing we are doing here, which is quite simple. I mean,
no, I didn't. I started that way. I started with Hangouts, and it's cool. But what started me doing it live was a friend of mine who actually runs a marketing firm in Sacramento, California. He is the least technical person I've ever met. I mean, he just won't even bother. He's just like, I have people for that. You know, I don't know how to do any, but he knows how to show up and be really great on camera. So I hauled all my gear down to his offices, and we did an episode there, and it was so amazing and so different doing it live. It was so visceral, and it's challenging because, you know, I'm a voiceover artist, as you can tell, because I'm in my studio and my mic is back there. And the hardest thing doing them live is the audio. So my audio was always the most challenging and maybe not the best part, but it was fun. You know, it's really fun to do it, and it's a challenge, and it's a little garage quality. And I wasn't really trying to make it. It was just me. I mean, I wasn't getting paid to do it. I didn't buy any extra gear. I just took what I had, went out and did it. And it was really fun. And after I did it live with him, I was like, oh my God, this is so much fun. So they were all live after that.
Yeah.
And,
so, but that takes much more effort, I think.
It what?
Yes. It takes much more effort to set up a live interview in the studio, and it's. I was saying that these hangouts here are very. I send you an invite. Like we click on a button and we go.
Yeah. Well, but you're in another country too. I mean, if I wanted to do a chat with somebody on the other side of the world, hey, I would love to go there and interview that person, but chances are I would have to do it in a hangout. So I kind of focused on people that, luckily I live near the Bay Area and I go to conferences and things. And so these are rich environments to hook up with people who I might not otherwise get to see and do chats with. And those are some of the ones that I have in the can, as it were, that are not edited yet, but that I still plan to get out there.
I'm waiting eagerly for your new episodes because it's really interesting. I'm really recommend people to
Oh, I'm glad. I'm glad, you do these things. You do these things because you want to do them, and you're like, well, I don't care if nobody watches. That's fine. I will still love doing it. And then you really have no idea if it's reaching people or not. That's the great thing about the internet these days, is you can do things like that and create content that you love and put it out there. So
I'm sure you have a lot of viewers on your show, also because you have a lot of followers on social media. I think it's like 2 million people are following you.
I think it's a little over that, but around that number. And about,
they grow every day. How do you get to that point?
Wow, how do you get
secrets to be popular online?
I mean, my path was, when I started, so Google Plus was really the kind of the turning point for me. I really hadn't done much social media when Google Plus happened. and I got an invite and got in the first day. Trey Ratcliffe invited me in. And, you know, I'd been on Facebook a little bit, but only friends, and really wasn't posting photos, and was pretty much a lurker. I'd only really lurked. I had that down. So then Google Plus started, and I thought, wow, this is really interesting and different. And so I kind of followed Trey around, and I met Thomas Hawk, and then, you know, a lot of the people who were there, and Colby Brown, and a lot of people who were there in the beginning, and just kind of watched what they did, because I was like, okay, it's not just social media, that's photography, and it's sharing photos, and a whole world is happening here. And oh my goodness, this is amazing. And in the early days, it was really, I mean, it was just amazing. It was an explosion of, I mean, everything. I met people, I got to meet people I never would have met before. I got to see work I would never have been aware of. I got to meet people in person after knowing them online, you know, like you and me. I mean, that's how, you know, you and I got to know about each other, was through Google Plus. So then from there, I mean, so I started off and just, you know, tried to create really good content, tried to post regularly, create great content to the best of my ability, and reach out to people and respond to other people on their streams. They used to do I don't know if they still do it or not, they do a suggested users list. And I did at some point ended up on that. And that, of course, accelerates, you know, the followers. But I did have an opportunity to ask one day at Google when I happened to be there, I said, why did you do that? Because everybody kind of poo-poos. They say, oh, well, you know, you were on the list, so you get all these followers, which is, you know, which is true. I'll be honest. You get a lot of followers that way. But I asked them why, and they said, because you have a voice, and you talk to people a certain way, and it's really positive, and it's really life affirming, and we want that. We want people to be connected with that, and that's why we did that. So yeah, I was like, that's okay.
I cannot claim to be an expert on how to be popular on social media, but
I can't either.
One thing that I learned is that you can employ tactics, you can employ SEO and content marketing and all that stuff, but
right,
if you don't come through as a real person, as a true person, as something that people
exactly
can trust, someone that people can trust, you will not be successful.
Right. And that's the thing about, you know, growing a business, growing social. Everybody focuses on social, and social's great. I mean, it blessed me with so many opportunities. You know, I mean, yes, all my photos went out there in the world, and I don't put a copyright on them, and God knows how they're being used. But, you know, there's that part of it. You know, people say, oh, I don't want to share my photos that way. And I'm like, you know, I just think it all comes out in the end. I think if you share, I mean, honestly, I share a low res version. So, you know, it could be used as screensavers and things like that. But so what? Wallpaper? Sure. You can't really print it. Not really. And I'm more interested in that. So, and we kind of got off in another territory here about social, and I can't pretend to be an expert. I just know that, you know, if you stand for something that resonates with people, people are going to find you. And if you keep creating awesome work and keep being awesome and just keep showing up, you know, it's going to happen. Yes. But if people are interested in their business, they should be doing that and focusing on that for their email list, not just social. But I think it applies across the board.
It does. I'm just using some of the things you say to jump from one topic to another. And you mentioned Trey Ratcliffe, and that makes me think of the Arcanum, which you are involved in it to a certain extent.
Yeah.
So can you tell our listeners a bit about what the Arcanum is, and what's got Trey Ratcliffe got to do with it, and what you have got to do with the Arcanum?
Well, the Arcanum is, God, I always get the tagline, but it's basically, you know, he calls it the Magical Academy for the Arts, right? And Trey, you know, Trey's background before photography, you know, was in video games, and he loves fantasy, and he loves, you know, learning and alternative ways of doing things. And so, gosh, he told me about this in, was it 2010 or 11 or maybe 12, maybe 2012, he told me about it. And kind of his vision of this kind of like almost a Hogwarts type of school, but online, and where community featured really big, one-on-one time and critiques featured really, really big, and that this world could be created. And I said, man, sign me up. That just sounds super awesome. I mean, I've taught everything I've ever done for 35 plus years, so it seemed kind of a natural to me. So, you know, it took some years to develop, but then it did. Then he began to really create it. And I was one of the first 6 they called us the Inception Masters. There were 6 of us who started it and had the very first cohorts. And I was one of those. And I wrote some blog posts about it. I actually wrote I think it was a 2 or 3 part series about what it means to be a master in the Arcanum. And then when I had some graduates, or some of my cohort graduated from level 20, which is level 20 is the end of sphere 1. And that's kind of a step off point to another, you know, realm, because he's got it sort of stacked like you achieve levels and grow that way. And then certain things happen within the levels, and there are certain tests and accomplishments and things that you make, and you're led and critiqued and guided along the way by a master. So when I did a blog post about each one of my level 20 graduates, who were just phenomenal and amazing, and the whole experience was incredible, and the growth that can happen and the community that gets formed. And it's really a brilliant, fun, awesome way to learn, and as well to teach. The Arcanum is.
Yeah, so people should check it out. It's
yeah, the arcanum.com is
yes,
is where to check it out, and it's really quite amazing. Now, I'm not actively being a master in the Arcanum right now. I stepped back because you may have remembered earlier, I said after I couldn't do photography, I had a list of things I wanted to do. And apparently I'm a list maker, because I wanted to help, you know, kick off the Arcanum and get it going, and you know, really make sure that it was successful, and that my cohort, you know, was just amazing, which it really was. But then I had things I wanted to continue to do on my list. So I'm not involved in the Arcanum, but I'm more actively involved right now in some of the other projects and things that I'm doing. But it continues to grow, and it continues to be amazing.
It does. So we're almost at the top of the hour here.
Good Lord.
Yep. I would listen to you talking for much longer, but we have to somehow keep this within reasonable limits. So I would just like to ask you if you would like to add anything to this conversation.
Well, not that... it was nothing that's going to not keep us here much longer. Just, you know, do what you love. Do what you love. Life is light. Live your life as if it were your art, and you'll never go wrong.
Awesome words. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me. So it's so great to sit and talk to you about all this stuff. It's great. Thank you.
For me, likewise. And people, you already mentioned your website. It's KarenHutton.com.
Yep.
We'll put that in a link in the blog post when we publish this, so people will. Well, I guess people know where to find you already. So.
Yeah. Well, I do now.
Okay. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ugo. It's a pleasure. Bye-bye.